like I said, I'm at the ACC meetings in Amelia Island, and one of the kind of big mysteries of all this is we know what Florida State wants to do. We know what Clemson wants to do. They have sued the ACC. They want out. They want to try to get into the Big Ten or the SEC. They want to close the revenue gap. They've said this over and over. One more overtly, that's Florida State. One more quietly, that's Clemson. But we know what they want to do. The one that feels like kind of the linchpin of all this is North Carolina. North Carolina is one of those, if you talk to the SEC people going back years, like when they were taking Texas A&M and Missouri, when they were planning out the SEC network, North Carolina was kind of always the one that was the one they really wanted. They wanted to add the state of North Carolina, the footprint, the brand of the University of North Carolina is big, even though their football is not as good as other schools. And like right now, their football is not as good as NC State's football, but the brand of UNC is what everybody wants. The Big Ten would like it too. The longtime commissioner of the Big Ten, Jim Delaney, North Carolina grad. And so you kept thinking, okay, where's North Carolina in all this? How do they feel about all this? But the other piece of it is North Carolina politically has to tread carefully here. They've already been attached to NC State by their state legislature. They also are a charter member of the ACC. They've been entwined politically with the ACC. And I would say that other members of the ACC would argue that maybe favored a little much by the ACC over the years. And so it is very delicate for them. But like Ric Flair in our comments, and listen, Rick, I appreciate it. I heard you visited my town of Gainesville the other day. I don't know that went as well as everybody had hoped, but you do have some good points about North Carolina here. If it is indeed you, Ric Flair, many-time world champion, nature boy, jet flying, limousine riding, kiss stealing, son of a gun. All right. Does UNC want to keep up financially? Does UNC want to continue to support its thriving women's and non-revenue generating sports? If so, the answer is so clear, even Andy Staples can see it. Rick is referring to the title of this show. Does North Carolina want out of the ACC too? And I think the answer is a little complicated because I think there are a lot of people at North Carolina who do want out of the ACC because they realize it is possible to jump into the Big Ten or the SEC. North Carolina is the one, if it got free, if they said, hand up, we're a free agent, let's go, they could go to either one. The Big Ten or the SEC would take them. And with Florida State and Clemson, you're not entirely sure. You think probably, yeah, one of them is going to take those guys. With North Carolina, there is no doubt. So here's what happened if North Carolina did say we're out. As I think that turns the tide in all of these lawsuits. Because the other piece of this is, remember, Florida State sued in Florida, Clemson sued in South Carolina. The ACC then sues both those entities in North Carolina where the ACC is based. Well, if North Carolina sues the ACC in North Carolina, then all of a sudden your home court advantage for the ACC sort of disappears because it's also North Carolina's home court. But I don't think North Carolina wants to take that step. I think they would like to leave that fight to Florida State and Clemson, but their board of trustees is getting a little antsy. You can tell. So here's what happened on Monday. So Bubba Cunningham, the North Carolina athletic director, is heading down to Amelia Island, Florida. He's coming down to talk to all the other ADs, to all the other coaches. He's supposed to be back in Chapel Hill on Thursday. There is a full board of trustees meeting on Thursday. They're supposed to have a closed session. He's supposed to talk to them. Well, during a special meeting on Monday, the board of trustees says, we need an audit of the athletic department, and we need to talk to Bubba Cunningham in closed session about the finances of the athletic department because there's a deficit and it needs to be addressed.
But the first budget that we saw was a $17 million deficit and a $100 million cumulative deficit in the coming years with no plan to address that, to mitigate that. So if I don't want anyone to think we're talking in code, there are real issues here, a real concern that one of our most valuable assets and something that really generates revenue is not being managed properly. So that is the need for the question and answer, and that is the need for the audit.
So that's trustee Jen Evans. So you heard what she said, $17 million deficit this year and accumulated deficits up to $100 million over the next few years from the athletic department. There's a subtext to this, but let's hear from the board chair, John Pryor.
I think, I have tried to get more information from athletics and have had a couple of meetings with the athletic director. And candidly, I end up with more concern and more questions having done that. In good conscience, I can't approve the budget that includes athletics in it. And I'm just going to say I'm going to vote no if that is what we have to do today. And I really don't see why we can't have an extended discussion on this, because I think it is imperative for the board to hear all of this in closed session. I don't think people understand the issue. I don't think they understand the level of bad data that has been provided. And I think it is incumbent on us to get it right, not just to get it done in a hurry because there's a deadline.
Now, look, the Zoom of the Board of Trustees special meeting at North Carolina probably doesn't convey the vitriol, like what that actually means. That's the chair of the Board of Trustees. Now, he's attacked Bubba Cunningham before. He did it about 3 months ago. But that is him really going in on Bubba Cunningham. And that's where this fight is happening. And so Bubba is at the spring meetings. We asked him questions about this stuff. He said no comment. He said, I haven't heard. I don't know exactly what's going on. And at that point, he'd been in meetings. This was all going on concurrently. And so that may be true. And also, he's going back there Thursday, so he's going to talk to them. So he's got to deal with that. But this is definitely a faction going after the AD who it believes has been too chummy with the ACC and has not agitated enough for something different. Now, Ralph Meekins, who's another trustee, he points out that Bubba Cunningham said all along, these deficits were going to happen.
I've been meeting. We just had a meeting last week with the Rams Club, and our athletic director gave us a 1-hour presentation about where we are in our budget. And most of those shortfalls, as we all know, came from the pandemic.
So what he's saying is, look, Bubba told us this was all going to happen. You knew this. Why are you doing this now? Why this performative effort in a public meeting? You could have done this behind closed doors on Thursday. Why this now? So Brian Murphy, who covers Research Triangle Sports for WRAL, he talked to some folks, and he talked to one of the trustees, Dave Bullock, who's a former chair. Talked to Dave Bullock after the meeting, and you see where they're really going with this. So what they're saying is there's a deficit. You're running a deficit with a $134 million budget. Why are you running a deficit? Why can't you cover your budget? There's a way to cover your budget. You could be in a league that pays you $40 million more a year. You could be in the Big Ten of the SEC. That's what they're getting at. That's the end game here. So Dave Bullock tells Brian Murphy, it's not something that you can change with a snap of a finger. It's something we've got to be cognizant of. We can't sit back and cross our fingers and pray for pennies from heaven and thinking everything is going to quote unquote work out. We have to actively pursue what's in the best interests of Carolina athletics. Murphy asked Bullock, is he advocating to join another conference? Bullock tells Murphy, I am advocating for that. That's what we need to do. We need to do everything we can to get there, or the alternative is the ACC is going to have to reconstruct itself. I think all options are on the table. Okay, so this is more close to what Florida State was doing. Remember August of last year, I came on and Florida State had this board meeting and it was wild. But it was a little bit different because the president was in that meeting. The athletic director was in that meeting. The board of trustees, the president, the AD were all on the same page. They were all singing from the same hymnal, and all of them wanted to get the hell out of the ACC. North Carolina clearly is not all on the same page because the AD is getting attacked by various trustees, defended by other trustees. This one is going to get really interesting because if this power struggle ends with Bubba Cunningham either coming out publicly and saying, we got to get out of here, or losing a power struggle. And the people who win it say, we got to get out of here. I think that speeds things along. I think that changes the math on this. We know North Carolina, if Clemson and Florida State could get out, would probably get out too. But they've been very politically savvy about all this. They've tried really hard to stay neutral, keep everybody happy. JW Noel says, fire Bubba and Boo. They're more loyal to the ACC. They are to their own universities. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I just think they're trying to thread a needle here. Boo Corrigan is the athletic director of North Carolina State. I think they're trying to thread a needle here. I think that's what's going on. But again, big picture, do not assume that any of this is done, that this is settled, that once the Big Ten took the teams it took, the Big 12 took the teams it took, the ACC grabbed Cal and SMU and Stanford. Oh, by the way, it's very weird to see the Cal and SMU and Stanford people. I was talking to Justin Wilcox, the Cal coach, yesterday, and I'm like, how strange is this? He's like, it is surreal, because he's sitting there across the table from Duke and North Carolina and Virginia. But that's how weird all this is. It's not done. It is not done. We just don't know exactly how it ends. I keep saying, I think the ACC will come up with a number that if a school wants to leave, it can pay and it can get out. The deal is, remember, the TV rights allegedly attached through the grant of rights to the ACC through the length of this contract with ESPN, which goes till 2036. But according to at least one clause in one of Florida State's lawsuits, ESPN has to decide early next year whether they want to continue that on the back half of that contract, because it could end much earlier if they want it to. So all of this is up in the air. But I do think the ACC probably has a lot more to lose than Florida State, than Clemson, than if North Carolina jumps on board, because the worst case scenario for all of those schools is they stay in the ACC until 2036. Not they want all what they want. As you saw with the North Carolina folks, they don't want to run those deficits. They want that money. But it's not the end of the world. You can continue on. If the ACC were to lose at trial, the ACC cannot continue on. It would break apart immediately. So that is where the incentive comes from. And I think the incentive grows stronger to figure that out if North Carolina, if someone in charge, if their board of trustees just decides, hey, we've decided we're out. It certainly sounds like there's some people there who are pretty powerful agitating that way. And then there are other people on North Carolina's campus who don't want to be as overt as Florida State has been. It's going to be wild. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.